Etsy seemed to be the one that was consistently making money. Not a lot. It was like $20 to $50 a month. But even though I had not touched it, right? So I was like, that's interesting. Like, social media, you spin your wheels and you have to post every day, multiple times a day, and then try to make money. And I had not monetized through social media.
Yeah.
My blog, you have to post, at least once a week, if not every day or a few times a week. And that I wasn't making any money either. And so I was just like, maybe I need to double down on Etsy. And it's really hard at figuring it out. And eventually something clicked and I started to make products that were selling. And honestly, I think it was about 3 months from when I decided to go like all in that I went from making like 50 to $100 a month to thousands. And eventually it got up to like 10,000. I think my biggest month to date from all the years I've done it was like $17,000 in a month.
Wow. And that's amazing. So well, welcome back to another episode of Lessons into Blessings podcast. I'm your host, Tari Thomas. And today we have a special guest with us. We're taking it a little bit in a different vein because we're talking about how to generate additional passive income streams. Now, I heard from a lot of you guys talking about you may not have the amount of money to invest in real estate. Well, I have Rachel Jimenez coming on to talk about additional ways to generate passive income streams. She is a mother of two, a wife, and a multiple business, six income business generator. She teaches moms different strategies on how to generate passive income through online businesses and other streams. And I'm glad to have her on here because I believe these are some ways and tips that you guys can use to get started generating passive income streams to then now turn in and to buy real estate. So join on me on the show. Warm welcome for Rachel Jimenez.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, it's good to have you.
Yeah, good to be here.
So you started out on this journey in 2020, sometime around then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you've gone on to kind of working full time to now being full time on just these online businesses that you've been able to generate. And so I know a lot of people see TikTok videos and YouTube videos and all sorts of things of, oh, these are, ways you can get started generating income streams. How did you even get started on this path to kind of saying, yep, this is something that I want to do? Kind of take us back to when you were working full time and making where that pivotal decision was when you said, okay, how can I generate additional streams? Take us back to where your mindset was and what caused you to kind of transition into this space.
Okay, that's a big question. It's like, how far back should I go? I'll try to go far back, but go fast.
Yeah,
so when I was, like many people listening probably, I was fascinated by money. I had, friends and family that were business owners and seemed to make the most money, right? I feel like business owners, I observed that pretty young, that people that had businesses seemed to have a little bit more freedom, how they made a little bit more money. So that always fascinated me. So I studied business in college. I went on to work at a nonprofit. It was a women's business center, and I did business counseling there and taught workshops. But it was a nonprofit. So I made very little money, and I kind of worked in a lot of different industries. I worked in finance. I was like an executive assistant for a financial planner. After that, I worked in biotech at a startup. So I was always in businesses, and I got to see a lot of different angles, a lot of different varieties, and the problems and challenges. But I got to see through lines too of like, what were the problems that all these different businesses had? And were any of these ones that I wanted to create? Because a lot of the ones I was in, it was active income, right? Like you have to show up, even if they made a lot, for the time they showed up, they had to show up to work every day. The economy, there's ups and downs and things like that. So I was working in that. I ended up going into, if you've ever heard of Peter Drucker. So eventually I went to the Drucker School of Management at Claremont Graduate University, and I started working in alumni engagement there. And just because we're talking about money and business, that was a big jump for me. So I kind of started my path. It was right after the recession. And so jobs were a little bit harder to come by, and the jobs that you could find didn't pay that well. And I had a business degree, but I was kind of a jack of all trades, right? I was a generalist. So now if you go into a very specific, like you can do cybersecurity, those are very high paying jobs, but the market was very different when I came out of college. And so I feel like my first like good job was working at the Drucker School in alumni engagement. I got a pretty big raise when I went there and made that jump. And then within a couple of years, I got promoted from the assistant director to the director. So I was kind of in charge of alumni engagement for just a portion of the school. And then I was in charge of alumni engagement for the entire university, which was really cool. And I learned a ton there. I also studied positive psychology there. And I do think that was a turning point for me because this whole time while I was working in all of these different jobs, at the same time, I was doing online courses. I was going to in-person trainings. I was trying to figure out what kind of side hustle I could do. And I did some. I created a course, an in-person course. I partnered with the Women's Business Center to put that on. It was a 90-day business challenge. So I teach people how to start and grow a business and make money guaranteed in 90 days or their money back. So it was fun. It was a lot of work. It was not passive. So I learned like, oh, I like this, but I don't like the non-passive part of it. So it was an interesting kind of thought exercise to see if I could do it, but then it took a lot of energy, and you just get busy and you get comfortable too when you're working a job that you like. And so I kept going down that path. One random thing that I did that I dabbled with was, it was dog vacay at the time. Now it's Rover, but I signed up to do dog vacay, and I just did it on a whim to see if I could, watch a dog, babysit a dog and make a little bit of extra money. And that actually did really well. I remember one month, it was in July. So July is when everybody goes on summer vacation. And I made like $1,000 that month just from watching dogs. And I love dogs. And they would come to my house and, you feed them, you water them, you pet them a few times, you make sure they're okay. They get free run of my house. But for the most part, it was great. It was great until it wasn't. Eventually, I got some bad dogs. And I guess it's just a numbers game. Most of them are good, but you'll get some of the bad apples, I guess. So there was some of them like, went to the bathroom on my couch, and I kind of like Airbnb,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's great until you have that one that's just destroyed your place. Yeah.
So that they like scratched up my door. Another one peed on my couch, and so it's like those are expensive, right? Like most of the time, I think I made $30 a day, so that would add up if you have a lot of days and nothing goes wrong. But when one thing goes wrong, it's like, well, how much does it cost for you to replace your couch? Or to like fix your door, because I think it was the door jamb that got messed up. So it's like those can be, hundreds to thousands of dollars of fixes. So eventually, and then I had kids. I was like, this doesn't make sense. So then I stopped doing that. But then I always wanted to blog, and during this time for years I had a blog, but I didn't know anything about blogging. And looking back now, I still feel like I could learn so much more about blogging. But back then I really didn't know what I was doing or how to make money. So I had a blog and I wrote about things that I thought were interesting, but it wasn't making any money. I didn't know how to make any money, quite frankly. And so then I was always listening to podcasts about personal finance and business and things like that, just like the people listening to this podcast probably. And there was a woman that was talking about starting an Etsy store and selling digital products specifically. So you wouldn't have to pay for shipping and things like that. And I thought that was interesting. I'd always been interested in Canva. All my jobs required me to like create flyers and stuff like that. So I was like, I could probably create something. So I purchased, and she had a course on blogging and a course on Etsy. And I was more interested in the blogging course because I had a blog, but it wasn't making any money. So I signed up for that one, but just on a whim, I was like, well, Etsy seems interesting and I'm just curious. And as a dabbler, I was like, well, what the heck? So I bought both of those courses. And I think within I started with Etsy because I thought, Etsy is probably easier than blogging. Like blogging, you have to figure out the basics, set it up, and then you have to consistently blog. Whereas Etsy, I'm like, maybe I can just create some products, throw it up there and I'll make money. And I don't have to like actively manage it. So I did Etsy first. Within like a month, I took the course, got some products up there, listed them. And then once that was done, I got a few of my first few sales and I was super excited about it. And then I was like, okay, that's working. Let me move on to blogging. And so then I focused on blogging. And then life happened and I was busy working full time and all of that. And so I had all these things and I was doing social media, right, as we do, to try to promote my blog, Etsy store, and all the things. And I think that was in 2019. So I had a child. My son was born in 2018. So he was less than a year old, I think. Or no, he was just over a year old, if I'm doing the math right. And I was just a lot. And so I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm spinning my wheels, but I feel like I'm not successful at any of them. And so like in a moment of clarity, I kind of journaled out all the things I was working on that could try to make money. Because having my son too, I enjoyed my job, but I was starting to get to the point where I'm like, do I want to do this forever? Especially if I have another kid, like life just feels so busy and I want to spend time with my kids. But also I like contributing to my family and making money. And I'm part of the financial independence retire early community. So that's always been my goal as well, is to try to make as much money to not have to work. And so I was like, okay, what should I do? And so I assessed all of the little projects I was working on, and Etsy seemed to be the one that was consistently making money. Not a lot. It was like $20 to $50 a month. But even though I had not touched it, right? So I was like, that's interesting. Like, you know, social media, you spin your wheels and you have to post every day, multiple times a day, and then try to make money. And I had not monetized through social media. My blog, you have to post, you know, at least once a week, if not every day or a few times a week. And that I wasn't making any money either. And so I was just like, maybe I need to double down on Etsy. And part of their course is amazing. Part of the course that I took, they have a community. And so I was really active in the community when I first was getting it set up. And then I kind of got busy and wasn't working on it. But I went back into the community and paid attention to the people that were in there, and people that had started the same time I did had like blown up and were doing amazing things, making thousands of dollars a month. And the cool thing too is I knew those people. Like, we had become friends outside of the community. And so I knew it wasn't like, oh, that's for them and not me. Plus that background I had in positive psych, I feel like my mindset had shifted a lot. And rather than being like, oh, I can't, I was like, wow, I know those people. I have more of a growth mindset. If they can do it, I can do it too. Like there's something I'm missing and I need to just learn more. And so that's when I decided to focus on Etsy, and I just put my head down and redid the course, like took everything I did. They have additional content from like guest speakers and things like that, and even doing my own research. So then I just went really hard at figuring it out, and eventually something clicked, and I started to make products that were selling. And honestly, I think it was about 3 months from when I decided to go like all in that I went from making like $50 to $100 a month to thousands. And eventually it got up to like 10,000. I think my biggest month to date from all the years I've done it was like $17,000 in a month.
Wow. And that's amazing. So let me backtrack, because there's a lot there. But what I heard is, and I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, is you get so caught up trying to do every single thing. There are, you know, so many ways to make money. And there's so many things. You're inundated on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube of all these different ways to make money. And so you can you can really idle your time by, you know, sprinkling it in many different places. So what I heard you say is, you know, hey, I scanned what's working, what's not working. And I think that's a great exercise for people to do, like start, stop, continue. What are the things that I need to start doing? What are the things I need to stop doing? Because it's not generating any value, or it's not doing enough for what I want to achieve. And what are the things I need to continue? And it sounds like you narrowed down, got focused on this one specific area and just doubled down. You create, you number one, you got help too, right? So you also looked at, okay, who are the experts in this field on this one area? I started it. How do I continue to throw fuel on this area that I think is generating some traction? Absolutely. And getting insight and input, and then having a community around you that supports you in doing so, right? Like-minded individuals that you say, yeah, me too. I can be a part of that community and be generating, you know, this kind of revenue in the business. What do you said there was this shift. What was that click that you had that went from hundreds to thousands? Is it just refining the business and really honing down on what was really selling, or what are those things that helped you kind of make it shift?
That was part of it. I think this is my biggest lesson. It might seem so simple, but you have to do market research. And I learned that in business school. And, you know, you hear that all the time, like understand who your market is, what they want, what their pain points are. And it's not easy to do, but it is simple. And so I think so many people, myself included, it's just like, oh, I really like budgeting, and there's a lot of people that are in debt, so I'm going to teach that to people. But in reality, there's a reason that people are in debt and they don't budget because they don't like it. Right?
Right.
And so there are people that are successful at helping people with that, right? They've figured something out. But then there's some people that, like, you might be good at it for yourself, but are you the best teacher? Are you the best person to inspire people, to motivate people, to help them have that transformation? And so I think it's figuring out like what you like to do, what you're good at. And the most important thing is what the world needs and are actively searching for. And you need to have alignment with those things and have a platform where they're showing up. So for me, my platform was Etsy. I could have created a Shopify store, but then that requires a whole nother skill set of driving traffic. So the cool thing with Etsy is that they drive traffic to Etsy and you're on Etsy, and then you just have to figure out that algorithm and get to the top. But part of it for me was finding like these small niches where there wasn't a ton of competition, but there was still demand. When I was first starting, I was going in places that there was demand, but there was a lot of competition. So I just was never showing up in the search. And so once I figured that out and was able to show up in the search, then, if you're one of few people and there's a lot of people searching for something and you're one of 3 that are selling it, you're going to be successful.
I think that's great. That was actually one of my questions too on, do you, what are the kind of most popular, things that are out there? And does it make more sense to do the popular thing or do the niche thing? And you kind of answered that of like how to hone down into your niche. What was, for those people who are starting and are saying, like you said, doing your market research, how do they do market research? Do they hire somebody for that? Do they just, is it market research just going and just Googling and figuring out what, how would you.
There's a few different tools, so I can give you that insight. So Pinterest Trends has, so it's trends.pinterest.com. There's Google Trends, which is trends.google.com. So you can just type the keywords in there. I think the hardest part is just brainstorming and throwing random words up there, right? Like you just okay, budget planner. What's the demand for that? Is it growing? Where is it seasonally? Because the other thing is timing. You might have the best product, but like I will tell you, budget templates, weight loss things, they do great in January. Right. Everybody has a New Year's resolution. And then it like is a steep cutoff because everybody is like, they've either figured it out and bought the thing and they're still doing it, or they just have given up. And it's like, okay, next year. So there's these big jumps in certain times. But I think Google Trends, Pinterest Trends, there's like, if you're selling Amazon products, for example, there's Jungle Scout, which is a tool that can help you do that. For Etsy, there's eRank, but there's also like Marmalade. If you just Google like Etsy research tools, there's a ton of them. And they all do similar things. They're all slightly different. And you just need to figure out which tool you want to use, become an expert in that, and then really pay attention to the data in those tools because they're so helpful. And that was a turning point, honestly, was that I started using those tools because otherwise you're just guessing. And they do require an investment. Like eRank, I think they have a $5 or $6 a month option. So it's not that expensive and it's month to month. So you can, if you're going to do your research, you can spend $6 and do it for 1 month and then just get rid of the program once you figured out what niche you're going to go down into. But yeah, and then even like I still to this day for my blog, now I've figured out more of blogging and my blog is monetized, but there's Ahrefs, SEMrush, there's Ubersuggest, there's all these tools that give you data. I think you're a data and numbers nerd like I am. It's so valuable. And I think I'm sure there's people that are successful without the data, but I think that's few and far between. And it's probably people that just have really good intuition and kind of know.
So it could be a trial and error, could be intuition, it could be research, but you still got to go out and do one of them, right? And do something to get started. And it sounds like you already did a lot of trial and error on a lot of different things. Okay, I'm going to do this blogging thing, I'm going to do this Etsy thing. And it sounds like, which I love, is that you honed in, you said, okay, you know what? It's a whole bunch of little things that I'm doing. They're not generating. Let me go focus on the one thing, the 80, like the 80-20 rule. Let me go hone down in on what's making, 80% of the revenue, even though it's small. And let me go get good at this, right?
Exactly.
And then you mastered that. And then you went back to blogging, right? And figured out how to create a revenue stream for that. So I love that you did that. And I love that you also are just, showing people how, like, aligning it to what their strengths are, aligning it to what they're passionate about. Because at the end of the day, even though it's now generating passive income stream, it sounds like there is, and you can speak to that a little bit, the time commitment and, the upfront cost, right? Like, there's going to be a little bit of a time commitment upfront cost in the beginning because you're honing down. But once you've done it, then it creates the passive income streams, right?
Yeah. It's totally possible. Passive income is totally possible, but you've got to put the work in up front. And I think so many people, again, myself included, like you dabble in all these things and you never go focus long enough, hard enough in one area to where it clicks, you figure it out.
Yeah.
And again, back to the positive psychology and just even understanding how learning works and how our mind works. Like, it's uncomfortable. It can be painful because it's not easy to learn new things necessarily, but you have to go past like the 60-second TikTok video where you get really excited and you're motivated and you're like, yeah, I'm going to figure it out. And you read one blog post and you believe in yourself. And then you get into like the nitty gritty. I mean, it's with anything, right? Like you want to run a marathon or even like a 5K. Well, you get motivated, inspired by somebody that lost a lot of weight or did it. And then you have to actually put the running shoes on, and that's not that bad. Yeah. And maybe you buy the cute outfit and you're like, oh, I'm buying stuff. I look good. Like, this is fun. I'm a runner now. And then you get out and it's a hot day and like you twist your ankle a little bit and now the work begins, right? And you're uncomfortable. Now you got to stick with it and, wake up early in the morning and you got to,
put the hours in.
Put the hours in, get the reps in. And like, nobody wants to hear that. And that stuff it's simple, but it's not easy, right? Like, it's really simple to set your alarm and wake up. But like you have your monkey brain just saying like, no, I don't want to do that. Get out of bed at 5 a.m. Heck no. Right. Yeah. It's so much easier to sleep in. It's so much easier to watch TV than watch a course or read a book or something like that. Yeah. So you have to put the time in and do the things that your friends probably aren't doing, your family might not be doing, but they're also not going to get the results that you're going to get if you do put that time in.
Yeah. So definitely consistency, putting the upfront time, honing in on what you're good at, what the market is, what is the problem you are solving, right? And, is it trend? Is it something that could generate? So doing the market research to understand that, and then putting it out there, right? Doing the work and testing it out, right? I think even the boldness in testing it out, and you talk to that a little bit, a lot of people in general, and I think women as well, right? We have all these gifts, we have all these things, and we don't even realize it's in us, right? So I'm always telling people, like, look at what's in your hands. There's a ton of things that you have access to, and you just don't even realize you have access to. How did you do? I'm going to talk a couple questions. How did you just do that inner search to say, okay, what is it? Really finding your area of focus, and then how would you help women get off the sideline of fear to say, hey, you talk about positive psychology. How do they get out of their own way, right? And really make the shift to say, no, this is possible for me. I know I have X, Y, and Z number of kids. I've got a husband. I've got my job that I'm working. Like, how am I going to do this? How do you get them off that position of fear?
There's a great book that I highly recommend called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. And then you can also Google cognitive distortions and cognitive behavioral therapy. If you want to hire a therapist, go for it. But I think those are some amazing tools, even if you just read a book about it, understand what it is. But it's basically reprogramming your thoughts. And here's the thing. We all have that negative little voice in our head.
For sure.
Psychologically, like from caveman days, right? We have a negativity bias. If the bushes were ruffling, we can assume that it's just a deer grazing, or we can assume that it's a tiger. Well, the people that assumed it was a tiger and hid or were ready to fight, they were much more likely to survive, because if it was a tiger, they were prepared, versus the people were like, oh no, it's probably the best case scenario. Well, if they always thought that, they're getting eaten and their offspring aren't continuing. So there's a reason that we have this mind, right? It keeps us safe. But now that we're in this modern world where, we don't have a tiger in the bushes most of the time in first world countries. And so it's ourselves. So we get in our own way. It's holding us back. So you just need to first be aware of like, oh, I have 2 kids, I can't do that. Or, oh, I don't have the time. When you hear words, I can't, things like I don't have the money, right? All of those things are getting in your way and they're stopping you from taking action. And so what if you just change the words, right? If you were like, I don't have the money yet, Or maybe you change the questions. Well, you might say, oh, I don't have the money. I need money. It's like, well, do you? Maybe you just ask that question. So that's the change your questions, change your life. Do I really need money to start a business? Do I need money to start in real estate? No. With real estate, there's a million different ways with any business. It's like, can you be an apprentice? Can you go learn by, maybe you're just like, hey, you knock on, you see someone down the street flipping and you're like, hey, I want to learn what you do. I have no money, but you have time potentially. Like, even if you're super busy, it's like, can you go and just shadow them? Can you take them out to lunch? Can you offer to paint a wall for 30 minutes of their time or something like that? Or, there's so many things that you can do if you change your questions and you think with more of an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset.
No, that's good. That's good. That's back to what's in your hands as well. And just thinking outside of the box. It's like, I call it possibility thinking. Absolutely. And it's like, okay, what's possible here? What's, and asking those questions, I think is a great way of really leading yourself down to like, oh, okay, am I shutting myself down? Or is that really truth, right? Like really resonating. Is what I'm thinking really true? And really, trying to determine, okay, well, if it's not true, then what else is possible, right?
Right.
So that's really, really, really good.
And let me share one other tip too, because I love this one. If you ever, sometimes we'll say something like, oh, I can't, I never, which is technically a cognitive distortion when it's like black and white thinking, right? Of like, if you just go like, it will never be possible for me. It's like, well, if you can find one example where it's possible or it's never possible for anybody, it's like, well, that person did it. So like your argument is just like null and void now. But a lot of times we do that to ourselves, but I love strengths thinking. And go back to yourself. Like, yes, things are hard, but you might be like, oh, I can't do this because of blank. Well, can you find examples from other people that you admire or look up to where it's like, well, that person did it. Like, if they did it, maybe you can. Yeah. But that's one degree of separation. What if you can look inside yourself and find examples? Have you ever dealt with something hard, right? Have you ever, maybe you've lost a lot of weight and you're like, yeah, business is hard. And you're like, I just don't know if I can do it. But then you can ask yourself, what has there ever in my past been something difficult that I got through? And most of us will probably have like it took a lot, maybe it took more time than I wanted it to, or maybe the result wasn't exactly what I wanted, but like, there was a hardship and I overcame it. And so that can give you your own confidence because you're literally that's your younger self. You're older and wiser now, right? So it's like, if you could do it back then, you still have it in you. And even go look and reflect on that experience. What did you learn from that? Like, oh, my goal was I wanted to reach something within a year, and it actually took me 5 years, but you still accomplished it. And it's like, well, maybe that's interesting insight that you have big goals and you want to get them quickly, but that's just not how life works. And so if you can expand your time horizon a little bit, then it's like, okay, well, I'm not a failure. It's just things take longer than I want them to, or that I anticipate them to.
And you always have the ability to refine. Right. So just like you doing your Etsy store, right? It's like, it was only generating $50 to $100 a month. And now it's generating, thousands of dollars a month. Like, exactly. That's a big shift. But it was like, okay, I started it. It is income generating. So it can be done. How do I make it better? Going back to it, to refine it and get it better. And I don't know how long it took that time period. Maybe it was months, maybe it was a year, but you kept going back to it to say, hey, how can I continue to produce from this? It's producing. So someone's clicking on it to buy it every single month.
Exactly.
What can I do to continue to like amplify that picture? So that's good. That's really, really good.
Yep, exactly.
So if you were starting all over again and you were advising me, or you're advising my sister, like I said, my sister is very interested in creating an online business and being able to create those passive streams. What advice would you give? 3 tips you would give on someone just starting out that says, hey, I want to go create I want to create an online business. I want to do something that creates that passive income stream. What are the 3 tips you would give them to just figuring out how to get started?
I think figure out what you want to do and you can explore, right? I think as much as I think you need to focus eventually, I think it's okay to kind of explore, because if you just pick one thing, right? Like there's people that when they're 18, they decide they want to be a doctor. They go through all this medical school and then they are like, I don't like this. It's like, oh, so it's okay to dabble and test and like, are you interested? And if you like have slow stops and starts, that's okay.
Yeah.
And you should be learning from each of those experiences and just kind of figuring out like, okay, that's a little too active. That's a little too passive. Like this is a little too hard. This requires me to be on screen. I don't like that. So you're going to kind of dabble in the beginning, and that's okay. I think that's important. Yeah. But eventually you can't get addicted to that dabbling. Eventually you need to pick something. And so you need to pick one thing that you're like, yeah, this seems, hopefully, like in my case, it has a little bit of success. And you're like, okay, there's something here. Yeah. I really need to go hard into it. And then you have to go hard and learn as much as you can and become an expert in that field. And for me, what helped is buying courses. Like you can find a mentor, buy a course. I mean, you can watch free YouTube videos, but most of the time when you purchase a course, you're exchanging that value. And even the community, like I think the community, having a course, somebody that's done it before that can hold your hand, depending on the type of learner you are, it's just going to save you time. Yeah. So I know that there's an investment there, but it will save you the time. And sometimes it's literally like if an expert, think of when you're learning math or anything, like sometimes you're doing something wrong over and over and over, and you're just like beating your head against the wall. Yeah. And then it's one little tweak. That's all you need. And so when you have somebody that's done it before, they can look at it because they have more knowledge than you and be like, oh, well, you need to be doing this. And then you're just like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Where could you have found it on a YouTube video? Maybe, but could it have taken you 3 years to figure out? Maybe. So that has been really valuable for me, finding a course that you believe in, that, has good reviews, that you can vet, the people that have taken the course have been successful too. Yeah. That's always good. That's good. Take that course. And then hopefully if it has an active community, because I do think, especially if you're working alone, it can be hard to stay motivated and inspired. And it can be really easy to give up because, I always thought when I was working, there would be things that I'd have to do that were uncomfortable, but because I had a boss looking over my shoulder or a due date, you do them, right? Yeah. There's no choice not to. Well, when you're your own business owner, you can just be like, no, I don't want to because, I'll do it tomorrow. And then you do it the following. You always push it down and nobody's going to yell at you. Yeah. You're not going to get fired. You're just not necessarily going to be profitable. Right. But I think having that community, I'm competitive. And so sometimes it's like friendly competition of like, oh, that person did it. And it's like, well, dang it. Like, I want to be able to do it too. Like if they did it, I can do it. And so I'll push it myself a little bit harder because I have that community, that inspiration. And when I'm feeling down, and even just, you can ask questions. So if you ever get stuck, as opposed to like spending 3 hours trying to find the answer yourself, you can just go into a community of hundreds of people, thousands of people and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And then within a couple minutes, you can potentially have an answer, or at least like a path to go down to get to a solution. No, that's very good. That's very good. So that was really, really, really good. I think, that's going to help people at least get started. And then they have to choose tools and all sorts of stuff. And that's the technical stuff, right? Right. But I definitely, I think that beginning session, just getting around the community and really honing down on what it is that they want, is definitely good. So we can't end the show because it's Lessons into Blessings without really diving into what you believe is maybe your biggest challenge or hurdle that you've had to overcome. And I'll make it specific to maybe online business. So the biggest challenge or hurdle you've had over your 3 or so plus years that you've been kind of in this space, what was that thing that you had to overcome? And how has that led to continued success today? Ooh, that's a big one. So I'll pivot a little bit from like my Etsy to my blog. And so I think before my blog wasn't making money. I wasn't really getting traffic in. And so that was always a problem. And I still don't get a ton of traffic to my blog, but I've found other ways. And what's interesting is right now they're doing this huge Google update. And so a lot of bloggers that had all of this traffic has just kind of dropped off of cliff. And I've found other ways, not necessarily from a Google, but other ways to get traffic to my website, whether it be like podcasts like this, or, potentially syndicating it on Medium or other places, or even getting press. And so that's helped me get some traffic to specific articles and to my opt-in offers and build my email list. So it's just fascinating because some people rely so heavily on one thing, but that's one thing I've learned is any of your one things can go away. And that's whether we're working full time, like you can get unemployed, you can get laid off, right? If you're in a business, Etsy, Google, whatever, an algorithm can change in a heartbeat. I mean, even on Etsy, nobody's fully protected because you can accidentally have some kind of legal dispute and your store can get shut off, like because they own it. You don't own it necessarily. Yeah. So there's all these things in the world that the world is constantly changing. And I've had to learn that too. Even with my Etsy business, there's products that do really well. And then, the trends change and those products aren't bestsellers anymore. And I have to pivot. But I think that has helped me realize that that's just part of life. Mm-hmm. And we have to have a strong mindset, and you just have to learn to pivot and move forward and take the lessons that you had and take the wins too, right? Like it feels really good. I can be confident about what I have achieved in the past and at least know that, okay, it was possible for me. Things might have changed, but if I figured it out then, I'm going to be able to figure it out in the future.
Absolutely. I think having the confidence in knowing, having that win and having that success is if I lost it all tomorrow, I could build it again, right? Mm-hmm. And having that and being able to pivot. I think it's also good, and this is something I learned when I was in corporate, never have all your eggs in one basket, right? Because it only takes, like you said, one person, one thing, one algorithm shift. It is good. And you have multiple avenues that you create passive income through. Mm-hmm. So it's helpful. So if one shuts off, it's like having multifamily versus a single family property is okay. I have multiple doors that are bringing me. So if one goes vacant, I still have a stream coming in from other places. So that in and of itself is really, really good. So that's a good one. So thank you for being on the show. I think there's a lot of tips that people will be able to take away. Let us know how they can find you.
I think the best way is just go to moneyhackingmama.com. So money hacking with a G at the end and then mama, MAMA.com. And if you scroll down, there's a passive income checklist that will give you kind of the tools if you're interested in creating a passive income product and selling it on Etsy. It kind of gives you the basics. Yeah. And there's more information on the course that I took. If people are interested in reading that review and learning more, that course seriously changed my life and has helped me generate hundreds of thousands of dollars. So awesome. I would definitely recommend that people look into that.
Well, we'll definitely make sure there's a link to that and people are able to get to your site and sign up as well, just to continue to get information on just different ways they can create passive income. Well, thank you. And thank you guys for joining us for another episode. Until next time, stay blessed.